I will never forgive Marvel for canceling these movies. Yeah, we really almost got a solo Doctor Doom movie, 2 more Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films, a Black Cat spin-off, and so much more. So let's get into the craziest Marvel films that were canceled. And let's start off with the solo Doctor Doom film that Fox was developing, because from the cast to the director of this movie, it sounded like it was going to be insane. But when Disney bought the rights to Fox's Marvel properties in 2019, they killed this film. Now, the film never got past the early stages of development, so they never officially cast anyone, but they were looking at Mads Mikkelsen to play Doctor Doom, which I think would have been an absolutely incredible casting. And it was going to be written and directed by Noah Hawley, who's worked on things like Fargo, Legion. He's more known for his TV work, Alien Earth coming up this summer. Since the film was canceled, he actually came out and said what he was writing in the script, saying it was going to be a geopolitical thriller taking place in Latvia under the rule of Doctor Doom. And obviously Doom was going to straight up be the main character told through his perspective, but there was going to be another character that was going to be a female journalist that came to Latvia with the mission of delivering a message to the world about what's going on here. But I'm not gonna lie, it kind of sounds like they were just gonna make like a movie about North Korea or something and journalism trying to expose what's happening there, except they were just gonna replace it with Latvia and Doctor Doom instead, which could have been absolutely terrible, but there's definitely a way this could have been great. And as I said, when Disney bought Fox, they did end up canceling it, but Kevin Feige actually did meet with Noah Hawley and talk to him about this Doom movie he was developing, so they were at least considering. But now obviously we know they ended up doing their own thing with a new Fantastic Four, and now casting Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom and only introducing him in Doomsday. I do still have faith in the RDJ casting in Avengers Doomsday. I think he can do a great job as a character, but not having Mads Mikkelsen is honestly a huge loss. This dude has proven time and time again he can be an incredible villain, and I think he would have been perfect for this. And plus, having a solo Doom movie before he's the villain of an Avengers film could have been a really cool angle and something new for the MCU. As you know, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was originally planned to go on, but there was also going to be a Sinister Six movie released after The Amazing Spider-Man 3 that, I'm not gonna lie, the script kind of sound absolutely terrible, so it's kind of a good thing we didn't get this. So from all the stuff we know from the canceled script of The Amazing Spider-Man 3, it would have focused in a lot on Peter's grief of losing Gwen and Captain Stacy and all these other people, and that stuff I think is fine. But where this movie already started to veer off into the super weird and just dumb realm is that apparently Peter was going to invent a serum to bring them both back to life. I also know this movie was going to apparently feature Doc Ock as the main villain, but also focusing on him kind of building up the Sinister Six of this universe, and Felicity Jones would have been Black Cat because we already had her introduced as Felicia Hardy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which, yes, is still a bad movie. You won't change my mind on that. But where things really started getting weird with this universe is the movie after The Amazing Spider-Man 3, which would have been the Sinister Six film, because obviously this would be before they launched their other Sony universe with like this version of Venom and stuff like that. But apparently in the Sinister Six movie, now we don't know what would have happened in The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Maybe his serum failed to revive Gwen Stacy, or maybe she like died again or something. But apparently there was plans for him to still be grief-ridden in this movie, and he ends up joining the Sinister Six. Again, we don't know all the details in between of how these storylines would have connected. We can just pick up the things we have heard from people that worked on this film before it was canceled, and this is what they say. I think what most likely is what would have happened in this movie is that he would have got the symbiote, and that's when he joins the Sinister Six, and then eventually he like fights it off by the end of the movie and ends up fighting the rest of them. Which, as you can see here, it would have contained Vulture, Sandman, Dr. Octopus, Mysterio, Black Cat, and then Spider-Man himself were part of the film. And we got a ton more canceled films to get to, but quickly let me know in the comments if you agree with me that would this have been a disaster, or do you think it would have been a cool angle to see Spider-Man joining the Sinister Six? And drop a like on the video real quick. After Sony canceled their Amazing Spider-Man universe they were building, and they started up their new Sony villain universe that started with films like Venom and ended up with Morbius and stuff like that, they were originally planning to have Black and Silver, starring Black Cat and Silver Sable, be like one of the first films in that new villain universe. So the film kept going through multiple different directors, and they could never get anybody to stay with the project, so eventually they're like, you know what, we're going to cancel this and just focus in on developing a Black Cat solo film. But that stayed in development so long that now this Sony villain universe is dead, and we'll probably never see either of those films, which, if we're being honest, is probably for the best knowing Sony's quality. Obviously in the 2000s we got the X-Men movie that started off this whole new universe from Fox, but the one we almost got 10 years earlier in the 90s would have been absolutely insane. Before James Cameron dedicated his entire life and rest of his career to making mid-Avatar films, he was really interested in different comic book properties. He wanted to make an R-rated Spider-Man film before we got the Raimi movies, and he was set to be a producer on an X-Men film in the 90s. In fact, it got pretty far in development. Like, Catherine Bigelow was already signed on to be the director of this film. I know it's hard to see anybody but but Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, but they were originally planning on having Bob Hoskins be in the role, which honestly could have been really interesting. If you don't know, you've probably recognized him from the Super Mario Bros. Movie, although he'd hate to be recognized from that. Angela Bassett was confirmed to be Storm in the film. Now, we don't know who the rest of the X-Men would have been, but just with these two alone, this could have been a really interesting film. Now, obviously, James Cameron is just doing his own thing with Avatar now. Those films make $2 billion every time he puts them out. He would never get attached to like a different big franchise that he didn't start now. But if James Cameron did somehow decide to be the director of the new X-Men reboot in the MCU, that would actually be cool to see this come full circle, because he could absolutely cook with this. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4 is maybe the most tragic one on the list, because he literally had the script written, he had storyboarding going on, they literally had actors cast for this before Sony decided to cancel the film, which is honestly just something I'll never get over. But let's go over the details of this one. The main villain was going to be John Malkovich as the Vulture in this film, which I think was going to be a perfect casting. Like, Michael Keaton also does a great job at the character, but this definitely would have been really interesting to see how this version played out. And Anne Hathaway was actually cast as Black Cat in this film. It seems like every time they're planning on putting Black Cat in a movie, it just gets canceled, so maybe they shouldn't put her in Spider-Man 4 in the MCU. It is kind of funny though how immediately after this film was cast, Anne Hathaway went over to The Dark Knight Rises and became Catwoman in that franchise. Very similar characters. And it seemed like Sam Raimi genuinely wanted to get like a little bit darker and more serious with the character as time went on, and maybe even get into a Spider-Man 5 with this more adult Peter Parker, which would have been cool to see. Hopefully we can get that with Tom Holland Spider-Man in the MCU. I don't think they're going to be canceling his next trilogy anytime soon. We'll probably get like 6 or 7 of those movies. Anybody remember the fact that when Marvel announced phase 3 of the MCU, they literally said, yeah, the Inhumans are going to be coming out in like 2017 or 18 as a film in the MCU, and then it just never happened. The characters then kind of got demoted to the ABC television show that did not run for very long at all and got absolutely panned by critics. The ratings were terrible. It didn't get much viewership at all. So I think the chances of us ever seeing these characters in the MCU is very slim now, not for a very long time, until everybody forgot about that disaster at least. It is a shame that we never got the Channing Tatum solo Gambit film that was planned. Now, obviously, he did get to play the character in Deadpool and Wolverine, and it's already confirmed he will be returning in Avengers Doomsday. Now, he was playing coy since it was just his name announced. He's like, oh, who knows if I'm coming back as Gambit or a different character, but he's definitely going to be Gambit. But the Gambit solo film Fox was planning could have been great. This is another film that had multiple directors attached to it. There were scripts being written for this film, but the studio simply never made the movie quick enough, and all these directors just moved on to other films. Like Rupert Wyatt, who did Rise of the Planet of the Apes, he was one of the first people attached to it, was writing a script for years on this film, and they just never moved on, so he left the production. Gore Verbinski, who did Rango, but more notably the Pirates of the Caribbean movies that he's known for, he was attached to the film again for like a year. He had a script ready for them and then just walked away because the studio never started production on this film. And just like the Doctor Doom solo film and so many other Fox projects that were in production, they all kind of just got canceled when the MCU bought it up. They said, no, we're going to do our own thing with these characters. Now, like I said, who knows? It might have been for the best, because a lot of the Fox movies weren't great, but their X-Men films were generally pretty good to great, so I think this actually had potential. Now, unlike all the other films that got canceled on this list, I would not completely rule out the fact that we could get a Gambit movie in the future, like I said, especially with him confirmed to be returning in Doomsday. Unless they like kill off all these different X-Men in that film, then there's no chance. This is a fan favorite character and fan favorite casting. I think even doing like a Disney Plus special like they're doing for the Punisher next year could be something really cool, even if they don't give him a full feature-length film. If you made it this far, drop a like on the video, and if you want to hear the breaking news we got yesterday about Thor 5 being confirmed in the MCU, click the video above my head right now. Thank you so much for watching.